Okay, let's see how we're doing. This is the Fiddle Club meeting, and let me just check out and make sure that you can see video and hear. Those of you who are on the chat, I'm going to ask the question in the chat. Can you see and hear? And we'll see if people can see and hear. And if they can, then we're going to get started with our workshop. And even though we only have a few people live, we have enough to get started. So, and so far, nobody's responding.
It's a beautiful day. People are probably in their cars trying to get here.
That could very well be.
I will go on and be your subscription.
Okay.
Fiddle Club. It is live.
Oh, Connie says yes.
All right, we're clear.
Connie says yes. All right. So if Connie can see and hear, then I'm going to assume everybody else can, unless their equipment is not working on their end as well. So this is the February Potomac Valley Scottish Fiddle Club meeting, and thank you for showing up on not the second Sunday. We've had to. Oh yes. Okay, we got more than one person who can see and hear. That's all great. So we've had to do a number of adjustments because of various things. I think March is March back on track. I'm gonna take a quick look at our upcoming calendar and go through the upcoming dates for Fiddle Club. Yes, it is the second Sunday in March 9th. It is the second Sunday in April 13th. And it is the first Sunday in May because we decided to give Mother's Day a miss this year. So May 4th instead of May 11th. It's
March 9th, April 13th.
Or April 13th.
And May 4th.
And May 4th. Yeah. So we do that from time to time. Sometimes we say, okay, it's Mother's Day and the mothers can listen to fiddle music.
There is also a Fiddle Club calendar on Google. So if you can find that, that's shareable. So you can just add that to your whatever calendar app you like to use. And the meetings should be up there. And actually, I'm trying to get better about getting the addresses in there as well.
Right. Okay. So I wanted to introduce our topic for this month. Usually every year I spend at least one of our workshops looking at something historical, a historical published collection of fiddle music. And that's what I've done this time. However, it's not one of the really, really old. I'm not going back to the 18th century because this was published in the late 1800s, 1890s, or perhaps it doesn't have a date attached to it. So it could have been in the early 1900s. But this is the work of Charles Grant. So here's the beginning of it. And here is a picture of Charles Grant.
Fine man.
Okay. He actually looks kind of friendly to me. So let me tell you a little bit about Charles Grant. I wrote this down on a piece of paper, which I left on my desk.
Did you take it from the bio that was in the Highland Collections book?
No, I took it from the David Bapty.
Okay, because I do have that.
Which is a book published in the late 1800s of Scottish musicians, both historical and contemporary at that time. So I think that his dates are like early 1800s to 1892. And he was professionally, he was a schoolmaster for about 30 years between 1844 and 1877 in Aberlour, which is part of the Spey Valley in Scotland. And so a lot of his tunes have names of famous whiskeys. And this is not particularly because he is an endorser of whiskey so much as he lived in the region where all the famous distilleries are, the Speyside distilleries. So So they're not necessarily named for the whiskey. It's just that this is a local place, and if you live there, you would go through this village, and there happens to be a distillery there. So places like McAllen, Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, these are all local. It's the same area as William Marshall. He knew William Marshall. We've all heard of William Marshall, the famous fiddler who late 1700s to 1835, contemporary of Neil Gow. I've got a tiny little cat down there, super cute. Her name is Fee. Anyway, so Charles Grant only has this one book. It was published by friends of his, and I actually think it was either John Glenn or J. Murdoch Henderson who did the publishing. So two big names in Scottish musicology, especially. And it only has 30 pages, but it's his original compositions or his personal arrangements in a couple of cases of traditional pieces. Mostly it's his own compositions. So when I went through it, I've known for a long time that he published, that he composed tunes. I've known some of Charles Grant's tunes for a long time. But when I went through it again, it just reminded me of how many tunes of his, relatively small selection are big hits. In fact, there were two tunes that I've known for years without knowing they were Charles Grant's compositions, because they just got, sort of dumped in with the traditional and no name attached to them. And then when I did the research, I discovered they had never been published before this book, and that they've become so universal that everybody assumes that they've been around for centuries. So I thought I would start by teaching you one of those. So it's a reel / hornpipe, and I've called it a hornpipe in our music because it has that distinctive dump bump bum at the end of the phrase, and it's used for a dance called the Highland Lass that has a hornpipe feel. But there are a lot of reels that also end dump bump bum. All of the Shetland modern reels by Ronnie Cooper, for example, they all end with dump bump bum phrasing, and they're not specifically meant to be hornpipes. So I'm still going to call it a hornpipe in this case because it fits a lot of the bill. And so let me play it for you. Let me just make sure here. I'm just checking my settings to be sure that I'm signed into Pete's Wi-Fi.
Well, you should be, if you're Ethernet, you should be.
It should, because it is Ethernet.
But you can do the Wi-Fi, that's not working.
Pete's home network?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Pete, can you put the password in? It's actually going off my phone, and that's why it's slow. Somebody said there's lag. If you don't mind. Sorry, folks who are watching this. Pete will help us with this. So this should help.
If we get the option to save it, let's go ahead and do that.
All right. Hopefully that speeds things up a bit. Yep. Okay, that's looking like one of those more productive Wi-Fi symbols. All of the little lines instead of just, yeah. Okay, I hope that helps. People in the chat, you can let me know if that's true. All right, so famous tune by Charles Grant. Let me get to it. It's called The Fairy Hillock. And somehow I did not publish this when I did tunes associated with the fairies, which was a workshop I did quite a long time ago. I tried to find all the fairy tunes I could, and I missed this one. So There are certain places throughout the Celtic world where it's often known as a fairy mound because a certain type of landform, small hill, folklorically, people would say, "Oh, that's that the access point to the fairies realm." And fairies in Celtic mythology they're not like Tinkerbell, with a magic wand and sparkles. They can be very mischievous and not necessarily in a benevolent way. There are lots of stories about the fairies coming and taking a child and replacing it with a changeling who is crabby and sick, and and it was in old times one of the ways to explain unexplained illnesses in children was that the fairies had done a switcheroo. And also when I did the fairy workshop, there are all these stories that I found. All of the fairy tunes, they tended to have an association with people who came home late at night, possibly under the influence. And their story was, well, I was heading straight home after that visit with the neighbors, and I passed the fairy mound, where it is, and I heard music coming from the ground, and I had to listen to the tune, and they kept me there and overnight, and now that's why I'm just coming home now this morning. Mm-hmm. And to prove that this is true, I will play the tune that I heard. And that's how all of these, an awful lot of these fairy tunes had that as an origin. Now, there's no specific story in Charles Grant's book about this tune, other than it's called the Fairy Hillock. But I don't know if he ever had one of these experiences such as described. But let me play it for you. It's a great tune. Okay, so it's in A minor, and let's go ahead and learn it. 2 pickup notes. So E and D. Okay, and then that's our first measure. So we're starting on a C. It's just up and down scale there. So with the pickup notes. So far, so good? Okay, next bit is up the scale with 1 jump. So skipping the D note. That sounded good. So let me add the rest. High A and back to E. notes this time, just the first two bars. And again. How are we doing so far? So far, so good? Okay. I'm also going to check something in the book. I usually don't find. Yeah, okay. Aha. Yeah, I was suspicious of that. Now I know it's just what I thought. All right. Well, we haven't come to it yet. So I won't teach it the wrong way. Haha. I caught it first. All right. So we have two measures that are in the key of A minor, definitely flirting around with the A minor arpeggio and scale with C natural. And we have a similar phrase, but it's now focused on G. So it starts out with B and G. So in this case, it's like a parallel, exact parallel of the first bar, only one note lower. Okay, so far so good. The next measure is up the scale. In this case, directly up the scale from G. So bars 3 and 4 are. So far, so good? All right. Now, let's remember how the first phrase went, because our next phrase number 3, is exactly the same, in fact, including the pickup notes. Okay, hopefully that brings it all back. Any questions so far? We'll get a chance to practice more. I promise. Okay, we have one last phrase to complete half the tune. So the final phrase starts the same way as before with the B and G notes. But it doesn't just go up the scale from there. Instead, it's wrapping it up with a more splashy ending. So that's the new bit. These are A minor arpeggio notes. E, A, a transitional note of D, and C, quarter notes at the end of the phrase that sound like a hornpipe ending. Yeah.
What is the first high note? When we start off, what is the first high note? Because I'm not
In this phrase.
in that
So we're down here on the G note.
Yeah.
We're going to jump up to an E and then an A.
phrase. Okay.
So it's a big leap.
I was fudging. the note.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
it's
good.
not like it's conveniently nearby. You really do have to jump to it. Okay. So that ending phrase, let's play it a few times through now that we have a little geography help there. So B and G. Jump to E and A. Yeah, that sounded good. Let's play that a couple times. Okay. So I want to put together the first 8 bars, the first half of the tune, the fairy hillock. Scale work. Jump. B and G. Scale work here. Right up the scale. Same as the first phrase. Ending. Big jump. And that's the entire thing. Let's play it. How's that so far?
I'm missing a bit.
You're missing a bit. You have where is it
In the
missing?
middle somewhere.
In the middle.
It kind of noodles. Like down, up, down, up, down, up.
Ah, well, I find this one to be nicely laid out. But let's go through it, and maybe you'll find the missing bit. So it's based around A stuff, and then almost exactly parallel stuff in G, starting on one note lower, right? And then it repeats the first phrase exactly. So let's learn this first phrase and the transition to the second phrase, and that should set us up pretty well for whatever it is in the middle that's not coming together. So we're right down the scale, and then up the scale, back down, jump, one note. So far, so good? Okay. And then right into the next thing, which is the same as the start, one note lower. But straight up the scale this time. Now we've got two phrases. Did that work?
Yeah, it's after that.
It's after that. So the next thing is it repeats the first two bars exactly.
I think that's what I.
Yeah, so we just had scale again, jump note, and then the ending, big jump, did you find the missing bit? Okay, let's play it through a few times so that you can find it in live action. One note lower. Straight up the scale. Same as the first phrase. Jump. Starting to come to, okay, good.
Don't ask me in 10 minutes.
But I think a lot of us can't pass that 10-minute test, so we're not gonna worry about that. We'll just keep playing. All right, next part of the tune, it's got the same kind of thing going on where it does a bunch of stuff on A for 2 bars, and then it does a bunch of stuff on G for 2 bars, and then it goes back and does the same thing on A for 2 bars, and then it has an ending. So our pickup note for the B part is a B note. So we're in good shape there. All right, and then here is the B theme. I like to bow it this way. So if you want to use my bowing, you may. You don't have to use this bowing, but I do. So it's a 1 down, 3 up. And that is a G sharp note. And the effect of of doing that 1 down and 3 up means that your one that's down gets a lot of emphasis. Right? When you're at speed, that's how it comes out. And you hear how that's definitely got punch to it on the down, because you have to in order to cover the territory and have enough room for 3 up. So in real life in the tune, we have the B pickup note, and then we have 3 of those figures. 2. Third one. And it just ends with an E. That's the end of the 2-bar phrase. Question? No? Okay. All right. And so, I mean, that to me, that seems easy enough. This is like repeats a bunch. Then we move into the key of G zone, right? And we're doing a rocking figure. It's all notes of the G arpeggio, which are G, B, and D. Right. So in this case, we're starting with a B note, and we go to high G, and then we play a D note and a high G, and we do that. And in this case for bowing, I'm just doing back and forth. So no longer this 3 in a bow thing, because it's actually awkward to do that changing strings. And just a little bit of advice. When you're doing a string changing figure like this, if you're playing a fiddle, obviously if you're playing a flute or a concertina or something, the same technique rules don't apply. But if you're playing a fiddle, you can either go wide, where you're going from one string to another the biggest, widest way you can, or you can sit narrow, where you're just barely not on one string. That makes it a lot easier. Because if I'm doing this rocking thing, where I barely change strings versus, see how much harder I have to work to do that string change? So just find that spot where you're almost playing the same at the same time, and then shift from one to the other just slightly. And if you happen to not switch, guess how it sounds? It really doesn't matter. So that's why I say stay close. And the worst that could happen is that you make your own harmony. Right. So don't get obsessed about, oh, I've got to change strings, and then you're working way too hard, flapping around. Keep it tight and short. Okay, so you only have 2 of those, right? For the A one, we had 3 figures before we got to the end of the phrase. Here we have 2 of them. And here's the wrap up of the phrase. It's still arpeggio notes. So let's find that. Okay, nice. So let's put that together. It's B high G, D high G, 2 of those figures, and then this wrap up where we go down to that G. Okay. Let's do it again. any questions on that? So now we really need to be able to connect the two figures together. So I said the pickup note for the B part was
B.
Yeah. All right. So we have a B note and then the 3 in a bow thing. And it connects to the next thing by going down the scale. And then our rocking. So from the beginning of the B part. Down the scale. Rocking. Great. Let's do it again. Down the scale. Okay. To do the third phrase, it's the same as the first phrase, except the pickup note. Because our first pickup note was just a B, right? But here we are on a G note. So we're actually going to insert a C so that we can walk down the scale. So let's do that lead in with walking down the scale. We're here. Everybody find that note? And now we're going 2 pickup notes, C and B. All right, so we're now 3/4 of the way through the B part. Let's do that much. So first pickup note is just a B note. And our first phrase ends on an E. So we walk down 2 notes to the rocking bit. And we end up on a D note. So then we walk down 2 notes. Okay, and that is our connections between the 3 phrases. Let's do all 3 of them. Okay, and now we have a 4th phrase. It starts the same way with the rocking. And then it grabs the ending from the A part. Remember that? So it's rocking. E to A. With its pickup notes. So this is the end of phrase tune, the very last 2 bars. Ready to put the B part together?
I have a question because
Sure.
I have a short memory.
Yeah.
So the first are triplets up, I remember, but could you just repeat which the rocking notes are for that
Yeah.
third, just
So
so I do it fast enough?
second phrase, and then again briefly in the 4th phrase. The rocking notes are G arpeggio notes. It starts with B and high G, and then rock back to a D note and back to high G. In the second phrase, the second 2-bar phrase, you play it twice. In the last phrase, you only get to play it once before you fold it into the ending. So just a when you are at the end of the tune. Okay, let's give it a go. Pickup note is B. Yay. 3 of these. Down the scale, rocking. Down the scale. 3 of them again. Rocking. Ending. Let's do the whole business again, so it's less taking you by surprise this time, right? 3 of them. Rocking. Three again. Down the scale. Rock once. Ending. More practice on that? Yeah. Okay. Let's do a few more times before we recall how the tune began, because we do have to go back to the A part and put them both together before it gets away. Have we passed our 10-minute limit for retaining it in mind? Hopefully we still have some mental capacity here. All right. So still working with the B part. Therefore, the pickup note is
B.
B. Yay. Rocking. Once again. Okay. All right. So this is the B part. Let's recall how the A part started. Anybody remember anything about it? Yeah, okay. That's right. Kind of starting from the E note and down to a C natural. Scale work. Jump. And now the key of G, same kind of scale stuff. beginning. Ending. Should be familiar. Does that sound familiar to everybody? Good, let's repeat it. Let's try the B part. From the beginning. Are we at the beginning again? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I lost track of whether I'd already repeated. It's a little hypnotic, but it is less confusing actually to go faster because you don't start saying, wait a minute, is this the third, fourth, sixth time I've been here? So since the phrases repeat in a regular order, when you go through them a little faster, it's easier to keep track. So let's put that into practice and play this tune just a bit faster, and I will crank it up, notch it up a little bit each time until we've played it a few times through. The Fairy Hillock. Anybody want it faster? Me?
Then we should do it one more time if you want to do it fast.
Yeah, we should do it one more time, closer to a dancing speed. This is a dancing tune. A lot of Charles Grant's tunes are dancing tunes. So I think that we should definitely do a dance speed version. Okay, so I'm sure I'm hooked on my violin. Perils of a Scarf. I'm sure there's somebody out there in the internet land who wants to play it faster. But right here, I don't think you want to play it faster now. Nope. Okay. In that case, why don't we learn another tune by ear? And this will be a slow air. And this is one thing I like about this is a little book. It only has 31 pages of tunes. So since there's mostly 2 tunes per pages, this is about 60 tunes. And there are a variety. There are some slow airs, there's strathspeys, reels, a couple of hornpipes, jigs, a slip jig or 2, a pibroch, and a number of slow airs, and a march or a couple of marches. So he really does kind of cover a variety of tunes, even just within that, smaller size. He's not a Neil Gow or a William Marshall with vast tune book. I mean, we cover the Gow collections over. I did one of them every other year. It took us 20 years to get through the Gow collections and repositories. So Charles Grant, we're getting through his book in one go. Of course, there are more tunes than I could fit in a single workshop, but all right. This tune is called Mrs. Jameson's Favorite. We have had it in Fiddle Club a long time ago, book 4, 28 years ago.
Maybe I remember it then.
You might.
I was in book 4.
Right, you were here in book 4,
Yeah,
right?
a long last.
And this is also one of Charles Grant's tunes that's one of his most famous. This is on the list of, if you know 10 Scottish slow airs, this should be one of them. But I noticed when I played it at the last jam session I played Mrs. Jameson at, people were like, what's that? It's like, shock. And I knew that I had to remedy that situation. So Mrs. Jameson's Favorite, it's kind of funny because there's a tune he wrote for his wife. This one's nicer. I hope she didn't feel shortchanged. But I don't know who Mrs. Jameson was. Friend, neighbor. Oh, okay, somebody else. Oh, I'm not answering the chat question. So Connie asked, what is the name of the dance that goes with the fairy hillock? It is the Highland Lass. The dance doesn't get done very often. The tune is fantastic. If people realize how good the music was, they'd program that dance more often. The dance is just, not bad. But the tune is great. So because it's associated with a dance that's not done super frequently, you can get away with putting this tune into your dance medleys. It's not like Deal Among the Tailors, where if you play that for any other dance, people will say, you can't dance that, other figures to that tune. You have to dance Deal Among the Tailors to Deal Among the Tailors. This tune, nobody's going to say, why aren't we dancing the Highland Lass to this tune? Oh, yes. And Ruth says, well, we should do it at the next Fiddle Club dance, which I agree. That would be a good idea. We can definitely do that. I will keep that in mind. And then Ruth remembers book 4. So you're not the only one, Sonia. So let me play Mrs. Jameson's favorite for you. This is an air that is written out in 6/8 time. So superficially, it looks like a jig. Not a jig. There are a lot of Scottish airs written in 6/8. There's often nothing about them that tells you play this as an air slowly instead of playing it fast as a jig. And so sometimes you get, people who see it only in its printed form and they don't know that it's customarily an air and play it as a jig. I know I did that myself one time. I found this great jig and I said, oh, that's really sweet. And then the next time I heard that tune, it was being sung by somebody slowly. And I said, oops. So it can happen. However, this one, I've only ever heard it slow. Mrs. Jameson's
Okay.
favorite.
Is there a rule why you would not be able to play a slow air faster? If it fits.
Okay, so yes, but I told you this was on the top 10 list of Scottish airs. If it's that famous,
Yeah.
it's famous as a slow air. And so playing it as a jig would just hit a bunch of people the wrong way. If it's not well known, you might be able to get away with such things. Play the slow version or a faster version.
If you're a famous fiddler, you can get away with that because you're being all on guard. So like Alistair Fraser does it.
Uh-huh.
Everyone's like, ooh, that's it. But the average person does it,
Right.
Doing.
Yeah, people say, you're wrong. Anyway, let me play it for you. Mrs. Jameson's Favorite by Charles Grant. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
It does.
Yeah, you just may have heard it because it really is that famous. I think there's a misprint in the music, so let me just. Yeah, there is. All right. Well, we'll get the corrected version of the music placed online soon. As soon after this meeting as I can get it to Pete and he can get it posted. So that's what meetings are for, to get me to correct things like this. Okay, so we're working in the key of A major, and it has no pickup note. It just goes right into the melody. So an E note, and then up from A. Next phrase. imagine this being sung. Sometimes the rhythm is played. He didn't write it as a vocal tune. He wrote it as a fiddle tune. But when you have words, goes with one kind of words and goes with a different set of words, right? So both of them are what circulate in the popular, everybody plays this air. You get both rhythms. I'm going to play it Grant's way, which is long, short, long, short. Let's attach it to the first phrase. And again. All right. Next phrase starts on the same note. Now it goes higher. Those are all arpeggio notes, key of A. Next phrase. So the second phrase put together, arpeggio. So far, so good. Third phrase is like the first with a C sharp pickup note. That should not be a problem since we did it before. Any questions? End of phrase? Ready for the fourth part? Just make sure, yes. So it's right up this gapped scale. Skip next note. And come down. Questions? Is it working? No.
Okay.
I'm really getting the notes, but the ornamentation I'm confused about.
Yeah, well, I'm not really teaching the specifics of the ornamentation. It's just that I cannot
Not
play it.
Yeah.
Right. And also, it's native to an air like this. A Scottish slow air should be played with ornamentation, not plain. And it's so much part of my style that automatically included. I can get more specific, but a lot of what I'm doing is I'm doing ornaments that are convenient. So I'm just rolling up to the next note. So there I'm lingering on the prior note. So there I am, again, lingering. Coming up from the open string. Rolling up, I'm using the same ornament again. And now that you know some of what I'm doing, I think you're recognizing that I'm reusing a lot of ornamentation. The slower I play, the more ornaments I put in. And then sometimes I stack them up on one another. So I'm doing those ornaments, but I'm adding more on top. The number of ornaments that should go in is according to what you can play comfortably without it disrupting the melody. It's meant to decorate the melody, not get in the way of the melody. So if it's getting in the way, use fewer. Just do a little bit. When you become more comfortable with ornamentation and it comes without you having to think too hard about putting it in, then you start stacking them in more and more. And they're all over the place. If you do singing in the Scottish style, you're going to start doing these ornaments vocally. And like I said, this is natively a fiddle tune. It's not a song. But I think of it as a vocal tune. It would make a great song. It's kind of got a high range for a singer. But other than that, it would be a great song. And so I just think if I were singing this, da 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 ba da 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 da. See, I'm putting in little dia things as ornaments. And so if I think of how I might sing it with a Scottish style, I try to make the fiddle sing it with a similar. So there's my short interlude on ornaments. I don't want to really teach them in detail because there's no one correct way to ornament this tune. The general rule of thumb is if it's a long note, you can ornament it. Well, in slow airs, there are a lot of long notes. So you can ornament a lot if you choose. But you also do not have to ornament everything. Just because I did it doesn't mean you have to ornament that same note the same way. All right, let's try to put our first half of the tune together. Mrs. Jameson's favorite. We've got all the parts of the A part of the tune. First part is low E and then up a scale from A. Arpeggio. C-sharp ornament, pickup, and otherwise the same phrase. Let's play that all again. Now, in Charles Grant's version, there are no repeats. You would not play that A part twice. You go right into the B part. But we did it so that we can practice. Let's go into the B part now. The B part has this lovely figure. It's really distinctive. it's a new theme, but it's actually tacked onto the ending of the first part, where we had same end of phrase. So the new theme is this moving line over A string drone. And then repeated material. So let's play that. Okay. Next phrase, same theme. Going up high to an A. That's also repeated. That bit is repeated from the first part. Really high. Third phrase. It's just the scale. And it's added to. We've heard that before. So that third phrase again with a C sharp pickup note. Scale. We're 3/4 of the way through the B part. The last phrase of the B part is the same as the ending of the A part. It's a climbing line. Jump up the scale. Jump. Scale. It's like a studied avoidance of using your third finger. Anytime you're in danger of using your third finger, go to the next string and start over with an open string and a 1. All right, that only applies to fiddle players, so my apologies to people playing other instruments out there. But the concept of the gapped scale is nothing new to Scottish music. We always play things that have scale passages with strategic holes in them. So we actually have all the bits of the B part. The B part has a theme where you have a moving line over the A as a drone. And the high point. Scale. Recycled. The entire ending is reused. Climbing line. And that's the whole B part. Let's all try it. beginning of the tune. No. Nobody offers anything.
It starts on E, but I'm a bagpiper, so everything.
So it's climbing the scale at first. Now it climbs an arpeggio. C sharp pickup and then the scale thing again. Then the gap scale all climb. Sorry, I messed that up. Let's go on though. The B part with the drone. Add the old stuff. High point. Climb the scale. I'll do it right this time. Climb all the way. And that's the tune from the beginning. B part. And we don't have to speed it up. In fact, we shouldn't, because this air is meant to be played at that speed. And that's one thing I love about it, is that you can teach it at the speed it's meant to be played. You don't have to slow it down to teach it, because it should be played.
Is it a
Slowly.
lot of long bows?
Yeah. And you also have a little room to add, personal touches, or, just kind of little personal interpretations of this tune. And when we play it as a group, we're all going to have to kind of come together and agree, and it becomes a little less personal. But the general concept with a Scottish slow air like this is that the basic pace of the tune, it's in 6/8, so there are 2 pulses that are quite slow. They should stay more or less steady. But in between, you've got a little bit of room. I could play, or you hear how those are all just a little different, but I kept the pace the same for every one of those figures. So there's room for that in a Scottish slow air. When we play as a group, we're going to have to just kind of agree on our interpretation.
I mean, you could even snap that figure.
Yeah.
Or even first.
I did that. Well, you could.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he does have it dotted in his book. Like that. But there's a little room. There's some room. All right, let's play this piece one more time. So if you want to play with little elements of style, you can. If you're still working on getting the tune, by all means, please just focus on that. Anyway, if I were Mrs. Jameson, this would be my favorite too. So I think the favorite part of the name is well deserved. What a great tune. So that's probably Charles Grant's most famous tune. But he has some others that are reasonably well known. Did I even put? Oh, I didn't even put it in. Oh man, I was gonna put in. Now I can't remember the name. I was gonna put in a Strathspey that J. Murdoch Henderson put on his list of the best Strathspeys ever written, and it's one of the whiskey names. And it's unclear whether he meant Charles Grant's version of the tune of that name or Scott Skinner's. And I meant to put it in, and I didn't. So we'll save it for another time. We have had the Skinner tune of that name, and Glenn Grant is what it is, actually. So J. Murdoch Henderson says, Glenn Grant, one of the best Strathspeys of all time. And he never said whether it's Skinner's Glenn Grant or Charles Grant's Glenn Grant. They're both really good. Dang it, I didn't put it in. All right. Well, do you want another tune by ear?
Do you have like a short jig or a march in a major key?
Oh, you don't ask much, do you?
No. The third tune, it could be merciful.
Well, I have no march.
Jig.
I have a long jig in C minor, 3 flats.
Oh.
So no, I don't have what you're requesting.
Then something else.
You do want another tune by ear, though, definitely.
Personally,
Yeah, the other door.
No, not for me, but.
You don't want another one by ear. Okay, people online.
We have a I don't mind and a not so much. So I'm flexible.
How about you?
I don't care. Either way.
Any other votes? Pete?
I'm experimenting with not following along and seeing what I could do.
Okay,
Well, I think
I'm
done
waiting
with
for
this too.
people who are online to say whether they want me to teach another one in by ear or just shift to the other ones off of the paper. I have a bunch of Strathspeys, and I think that's how I missed the Glenn Grant, is that I already had a bunch of other Strathspeys.
I'd like to recommend a Strathspey. Yeah. A friendly Strathspey.
You think they're friendly, do you?
Nah.
I should have done Glenn Grant. That's a friendly Strathspey, but it's not in here. Yeah.
Well, you could add it in the revised version.
Okay, Connie says not by ear. She wants to learn the slip jig. Okay. I'm gonna go on to the slip jig, but let me hand around some paper. If you want to learn it by ear, do that. And I have a bunch of interesting things to say about some of these. So let's see. Do people have papers they printed out from online?
No.
No. Okay. So this is the first page, take one.
Excuse me, so good.
And then,
I need one too because I haven't printed yet. I will get
Yep.
it back to you, Elke, after.
okay.
I like mine double sided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know they fit in the
Is this
books
yours?
better.
Well, when you have 32 years worth.
Yeah.
32
Oh,
years.
gosh.
I know, it takes up like a whole bookshelf for me now.
Right over there,
Yeah.
those white binders. The two ones in the middle are Fiddle Club.
Mm-hmm.
I got
That one?
Okay, and the fourth page coming soon. So this is pages 18, 19, 20, and 21. So one of each. Okay, I did promise the slip jig, and the slip jig is the one that he wrote for his wife, Mrs. Grant. And it's called I Hae a Lass of My Ain, and it's actually a play on the rather famous slip jig, also in E minor, called I Have a Wife of My Ain. So would you like to hear that tune?
Yes.
Okay. And I left that at home too. Man, what's wrong with me? I put all this stuff aside to come with us, and where did it go? Yep, definitely not in here. All right, it's off at the desk. But I think, oh, here it is. I do have it. All right. So I Have a Wife of My Ain, the traditional jig. I'll just play it for you so you have it in the back of your mind when you learn I Have a Lass of My Ain, the Charles Grant tune, so you know where he was coming from. And then here's the one he wrote. So another recirculating tune, just like I Have a Wife of My Ain. So let's go ahead and learn this. Let's go through it slowly.
Which page is this?
Page 18, and it's Mrs. James's favorite is on the top of the page. We already learned that, so I'm not going to go through it now. And I'm getting the sun,
Yeah.
which is inevitable at a certain point here. I'll just have to kind of lean around until I find the position where I'm not getting.
Get our shots fast. It's the
Blinded,
golden
yeah.
hour.
What's that?
It's the golden hour. We got to get our shots in.
It is, right. Let's try it at that pace. could go faster. But here's the thing about slip jigs is there's a lot of range of what is a good tempo for a slip jig. I think because he has snaps written in as decorative elements in this piece, that he's probably expecting it to be played a little slower with some, sort of this sneaky style that I was trying to give you there. Some slip jigs get played full tilt, like the most famous one, Drops of Brandy, is meant to be danced with a running step. And so you have to have a certain speed to run to it. Let's see. So in order to run, dum, bum, 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 is a pretty brisk tempo for a slip jig. This one, I just don't see it as needing to be that hasty. And you couldn't do these. I mean, you can, but I don't think it sounds as good as the sort of the sneakier, slower version. So I like it.
Snaps kind of become ornaments at that point.
Right. So I like it at a moderately slowish tempo. There's no tempo marking in his original source that says, must be played slow or should be played faster or anything. So it's your choice. Yeah.
Question. I was looking at your bowing at the corner of my eye. Are you doing an up bow at the beginning of some measure?
Probably. Yes.
Okay. And so when you're, for example, at the end of the first line, there are two Fs in a row. Are you slurring them into one note, or are you playing them separately?
I think I'm doing them separately.
Okay. I just have to do that.
And then I don't mind starting any of these bars up bow if I want to. Yeah.
Kind of like you got to live with it triple time.
Right. Yes.
The really question is, are you slurring into the bowing?
Yes. A lot of times if I'm doing dotted, that rhythm, and I play it up bow, I frequently slur.
And you slur
Because
into the longer note.
this rhythm of long, short, bowing wise feels really good down up. Where I can kind of drive the up bow, which is a very typical Scottish bowing, to drive up bows that are shorter than their long bows. So when I do land on an up bow for a long note, I tend to slur it out of habit. Because I would otherwise do it. But the bowing doesn't always work out in that, sort of ideal fashion. There are not a lot of hard and fast rules that you must play down bow here, up bow there. It's jigs and slip jigs are both very forgiving in that way. But there are certain figures that work out better if your bow is going one direction or the other. So the long, short, quarter, eighth rhythm feature is an example where down, up.
Now, I guess
frequently works better.
If you're doing it in the Scottish style, you wouldn't do an eighth note slur into the next beat because it's a very Irish sound.
Right. If Irish music has a lot of slip jigs also, and there's some discussion that jigs were originally Irish and reels were originally Scottish. I think there's been mixing going around for a long time, so I'm not sure you can say that quite as definitively. But there's definitely an Irish way of playing slip jigs that tends to have a little more across the beat slurring, or slurs within that beat. Like you might slur two and separate one out of a group of three triplet. That would probably not be done in a Scottish style bowing. You'd either play that triplet separately or all three in a single bow. But in Irish style, you might slur two of them. And you might also hook one of them into the next beat. So that's really just a little details of styling. most Scottish slip jigs, if you have triplets, they're slightly dotted, just like the jigs are slightly dotted. Okay, that's about all I have to say about this tune. Do we want to play it again before moving on to the next thing? Yay! Yes, I'm glad
Everyone's grabbed their
everybody
fiddles, so
everybody
that's a
really
yes.
wants to play it again. Okay, here we go. Oh, and Connie just says her favorite slip jig right now is the Snowy Path,
That's great.
which we put in Fiddle Club a few years ago. Even though it was written by somebody from Ireland. We liked it anyway. And it does get played at sessions. Here we go. I Have Lass of My Ain, also known as Mrs. Grant by Charles Grant. Here we go. All right. Mrs. Bremner from the Manse, Glen Bucket. Glen Bucket has an alternative spelling of B-U-C-H-A-T, Glen Bucket, which sounds a little more Scottish to me than bucket. But, I'm not going to argue with somebody's spelling choices. Mrs. Bremner, that's an interesting name. That name is the same as Robert Bremner, who was one of the first publishers of Scottish music in Scotland in the mid-decades. He published William McGibbon's music, and he published the Bremner collection in the 1750s, 60s. His name is not, a traditional Scottish name. It's a German name. There isn't any Clan Bremner with its own tartan. So it means a person from Bremen. And if you know the history of Germany, it wasn't a united country, but a bunch of disparate municipalities, principalities, and duchies. And the city of Bremen was one of the cities that was its own place. It was not part of a principality. Just like Hanover was another one, and Hamburg was another one. So his ancestors, or maybe himself, came from Bremen in Germany. So Bremner. So it's interesting that Charles Grant knew somebody locally who was Mrs. Bremner. I have no idea if she's connected with the music publisher, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of that history, because Robert Bremner was a very significant person in that he published some of the first Scottish fiddle tune books published in Scotland of Scottish fiddle tunes. Ones in the early 1700s had been published in London, so the fact that they were getting a Scottish music publishing industry established in Scotland was very significant. All right. This tune, majorly cool. Charles Grant does this with his compositions. It's in E minor, but it's going to go into an E major zone for a while in there. Cape Breton players do this all the time. And I think it's really interesting to see this obvious evidence that it was being done in Scotland, that it's not just a Cape Breton idea. That the Cape Bretoners are actually playing something that was happening in Scotland for sure in the 19th century, And I think we can also find some examples in printed music in the 18th century. Let me play this tune for you. Mrs. Bremner, The Manse, Glenn Buck. I'm playing it wrong. There, let me get this right again. So there it is, neatly drifting between E minor, E major. And this is something that I think is preserved in Cape Breton music that fiddlers in Scotland today have gotten away from. For one thing, with the rise of accordion music, accordions can't sort of straddle this gap between major and minor quite as easily. We can easily say, oh, is it a G natural or a G sharp, or is it kind of sitting in the crack in between them? We can finesse that. Accordions have to commit. They must play a G sharp or a G natural, and there's no G in between. And so this is something that often in Cape Breton, it gets attributed by people who do not know a lot about the origins of the style in Cape Breton, that the Cape Bretoners made up this stuff of sitting in the cracks between major and minor. I think this is evidence that this was going on in Scotland. This has been part of Scottish music for a long time. And, we have pretty clear evidence that Charles Grant thought about tunes this way. He's got more than one reel and more than one strathspey that straddles this major minor divide and keeps shifting sneakily from one to the other. All right, let's learn the tune. About that speed. So it could be played faster than that. Would you like to hear a faster version? Anyone who wants to play along. And also, if I were to adopt playing closer to a natural harmonic scale, scales weren't always fixed the way they are now. Pitches weren't always fixed the way they are now. You started with a reference pitch and then you tuned your instrument in a certain way. On the violin, we don't actually tune to equal temperament. If we want to get maximum resonance out of this instrument, we're using a different intonation system where instead of playing a compromise to play in every key, I try to tune that to a perfect fifth, not a compromised fifth. This kind of tuning is based on whole number fractions. You know, 1, 1/2, 1/4, 1/3, 1/4. These are the natural harmonics of a string. And if you divide 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, 1/8, eventually you get all of the pitches of the scale, but they're weird. Some of them are weirder than others. You know, the 5th is perfect. The 4th is a little different. The 6th and the 3rd are very strange. And so that's how you get a scale like this one used in this tune, where we have not E major, but E in between. There's the G that they're using. It can serve as a G natural or a G sharp, depending on how you decide to hear it. So I don't actually have to play. And then I could just play an in-between G for this entire thing. And an in-between D, neither sharp nor natural. So there I am sitting in the cracks with the D's and the G's. And I'm basing them as closer to this natural scale rather than closer to the equal tempered scale. And that's where this stuff comes from. And in Scotland in the old days, the pipes were tuned to this natural scale, which is what gave rise to the idea amongst a lot of people that Scottish bagpipes are always out of tune. So they're tuned to a natural scale. Now that has been adjusted. Modern bagpipes are a lot closer to equal temperament than bagpipes of 100, 200 years ago. But it's really, how is your ear trained to hear? And in Cape Breton, all the older players played with this natural scale. And to a modern trained ear, it sounds weird. And it sounds like they might be out of tune. And some of them are, because they're bad players in any day and age. But the good players were playing consistently with the natural scale. And modern Cape Breton players are drifting closer and closer to equal temperament. So just a little note of interest. Let's go to the next tune. So Ben Rinnes. We've already had Glenn Rinnes, which was either last year or the year before. We had it from a Jerry Holland version of Charles Grant's tune. So glen means valley and ben means mountain. So this is basically adjacent places. One of them is in the valley and the other one is in the, upland part. And this is, you can find it on the map in Charles Grant's part of Scotland. So this is another one that has been played a lot more recently because it got adopted as the title tune for a Scottish country dance. Just so that you can tell, it'll be really clear, this Scottish country dance is a modern dance. So the tune existed long before the dance. The Scottish country dance it's for is called Slytherin House. so you can guess that's not any older than the Harry Potter series. So here is Ben Rinnes.
The grand ball of the Charleston Scottish Country Dance Society had this on their program this year when I went down and played it with Julie Gorka. So I was like, oh yes, that tune. I heard something about Harry Potter coming back. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
right, that dance. The Harry Potter.
Yes, the Harry Potter one. It has a figure in it that's newly devised that involves people passing in a sort of S shape like a snake, and that's it's a modernly designed figure. In fact, I know people who introduced it, but as in living dance choreographers, but obviously that snake shape reminded them of Slytherin House in Harry Potter, whose symbol is notably a snake. So let's play Ben Rinnes. It's a good tune. The version that was published with the dance is quite recently published by the Royal Scottish Country Dance Society, and it has what I would consider to be modern accordion style chords. It's got all this cool stuff happening in the bass line, which you can do when you have those chord buttons on the left side and you can choose your bass note. I have chosen to present it in Fiddle Club with closer to Charles Grant's own chord choices. He used no Robert McIntosh. We've talked about Robert McIntosh before, a great Scottish composer of the late 1700s, whose bass lines and chord choices are just fabulous. They're amazing. Charles Grant, no Robert McIntosh. But it's clear he had some opinions about what chords would be good. And So I've made this closer to Charles Grant's vision, but I couldn't resist the bass walk up in the last 2 bars. So you got a nice bass walk up. Or walk down. I guess I walked down. Yeah, I did. All right. So Mrs. George Stewart's Strathspey, again, we don't know a lot about who he wrote it for, but he lived for more than 30 years, close to 50 years in the same area of Speyside, Scotland. So I think a lot of these tunes were written for his friends, neighbors, relatives. And so that would be my best guess. So, having played now through all of Charles Grant's tunes, I'm going to offer a few observations, which is that he had a real talent for writing minor key tunes. It's so easy to write a minor key Scottish style tune that sounds like every other tune in that key, because the Scottish way of doing it is just to okay, B minor for a while, now A for a while, now back to B minor for a while, and now tie it up. So it actually takes some talent to do something that's different from utterly predictable. And I think Charles Grant succeeds in that. He's got some interesting stuff in here, like the fact that the Strathspey repeats, it does that, rather than just immediately moving on to some, that would be much more cliche. Now he's got some drive going, and it's just by his choice in the details of the composition on the same old B minor A chord theme. Let's play this tune together. Slowish. Yeah, I like that tune. I think, I've said it's so easy to write a cliche type of minor key tune. Another, the other Scottish fiddle composer that I think of when I think of really interesting minor key tunes is Neil Gow. So Neil Gow, Charles Grant, he's in good company. Because I cannot tell you how many minor key strathspeys I have played that just sound like exercises because they are so predictable. So I really give him a lot of credit for being able to write a good tune in a minor key that is, notable. All right, Lynn Byrne. Here is another minor key strathspey that's quite cool. And Lynn Burn, the Burn is a stream. So it's the stream of Lynn. And that is another geographical feature right in his neighborhood. And so forth. So let's play it slowly to start with.
Is there an error in the penultimate bar? Or should that be a C in the in, so E C? Is that a stair step on both?
No, that is deliberate.
Okay.
Yeah. That one I know because I checked it out myself.
Right. I was playing it and I played the A and I heard different notes. And they, it cries out for a C, but he doesn't.
I know. You would expect it just to be or but it's not. Which has a different feel. I mean, it does make sense in a different way.
Yeah.
Also, it is, of course, possible there's misprints in the book. Right? Could be. However, the book really does say an A note there, not a C. Yeah. And while we're on, talk about unconventional, I want to be sure to play for you Glenn Rinnes. Let me find it. Glenn Rinnes, Charles Grant's Way. It's a big hit in Cape Breton, in part because of Jerry Holland's interpretation of it, which we had a few years back, not that long ago, in Fiddle Club. So here's Charles Grant's. and the Cape Breton reinterpretation of it, well, before it gets too far away. Oh, now I can't find my pages. Okay, I saw it here. I know it's here. Oh, here we go. Jerry, turn him around. So B part. So it's really similar, just turned on its head. And then in the Cape Breton interpretation, the way Jerry actually plays it, he's playing that C that's in between C sharp and C natural. And not on that particular tune, but Charles Grant has indicated that is to happen in enough of his tunes that it's really clear he was aware of that sitting on the crack thing. And it's no wonder that a number of Charles Grant tunes have infiltrated into Cape Breton repertoire. All right, we've got another tune here. Fairy Hillock, we already learned by ear, so I'm going to skip right to the Old Kirk of MacAllen. And this is another one that has those notes that don't quite fit in the standard standard scale of equal temperament. So in this case, we've got F sharp, that's sometimes F sharp and sometimes F natural in this G tune. So I can just see somebody playing that Cape Breton style and it would really fit. So let's play it slower. Anybody want to play it faster?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. 1 and 2. Okay. Well, the last page, the Braes of Elke's. And no, it was not named after me. We have had a version of this before. We have had the Cape Breton jig version. This is the first tune in Charles Grant's book, and it's really clear that he intends it to be played in a sort of grand, expansive way. It's got dots all over, dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, versus the Cape Breton version of this is definitely a quick dance version. So I'm going to play you the Cape Breton version, and then I'm going to play you Charles Grant's version. And I think that'll help you appreciate how, in both cases, the tune has been made to serve a certain purpose. Charles Grant's concept of a listening tune versus the Cape Bretoners' take on it, which is, we want to dance and we need more jigs. And here's a great one. So here's the Cape Breton jig version. And the air or slow jig version. Different feel altogether, right? You can find the Cape Breton version of this tune. It's either book 9 or book 11. My mind is kind of playing tricks on me as to whether it's IX or XI, but it's back there somewhere. So you can compare if you have that book. Let's play this version of the Braes of Elke's. This is also used for an RSCDS Scottish Country Dance. It's not one that's done very often. It's Trip to somewhere. Sorry, Trip to Aberdeen, I think. So it's appropriately named geographically, but their version of the tune is neither Charles Grant's version nor the Cape Breton Dancy version, and unfortunately it kind of falls short. It doesn't, the way they've arranged it doesn't make it an awesome dance tune. I don't know if the dance is better than that, but it doesn't get done very often. And maybe it's because they had a tune mismatch. All right, anybody want to play this tune one more time? Or shall we move on?
Move on.
Move on. All right. So the last tune that we haven't done yet is Miss Macmillan's Quadrille. So in Charles Grant's time, after around the middle of the 19th century, so while he's young adult, middle-aged adult, the kinds of dances favored in Scotland have shifted from country dances done in lines to quadrilles done in squares. And so quadrille dances were the ancestors of modern square dancing and the ancestors of Cape Breton squares as danced today. The concept, really briefly, I give a history of Scottish music lecture that I've been asked to do at a number of places. It's about an hour and a half long with musical examples. But my reason for why quadrilles became the focus at this time in particular is if you imagine what women's clothing in the UK looked like in the middle of the 1800s versus what it looked like in, say, 1800. So in 1800, everybody was like into Greek statues, and the women's dresses were meant to look like the drapery on a marble statue. And so it was this straight down to the ground silhouette.
On pier.
On pier, right. On pier waist, straight down from there. Versus, what do you think of when you think of 1850, 1860 women dress?
Corsets. Big skirts.
Big skirt, right. Hoop skirt, right. The hoop skirt was a technological marvel of its time. We don't think of it that way. But what happened between 1800 and 1850 tells you exactly why it was considered a marvel. That straight silhouette of the, inspired by the Greek statues gradually got wider and wider and wider because they put more and more petticoats underneath to poof it out. So by 1840 or so, it was pretty poofed out, but it was done with layers and layers and layers of fabric. And the women were like staggering around under lots of heavy layers of fabric under their skirts. And so the fact that you could replace it with one layer with a hoop and get rid of all the other extra layers made you feel free. So we're not going to get into the subject of corsets at this point. I'm not talking about women's underwear now, but I am talking about the hoop skirt because unlike the layers and layers of fabric to give that poofy shape, the one layer with the hoop meant that you had a lot of bounce. And so suddenly dances that made the skirts bounce were in. And guess what makes it bounce? Jigs. We even say bouncy, 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 bouncy to express jig rhythms, right? And it went with this technological development in women's fashion. Okay, enough of that excursion. Now we've explained why we have quadrilles. It's no surprise then that if quadrilles were existing in his time, that Charles Grant would specifically write quadrille tunes. One, I said that they needed more jigs because they wanted the bounce. The older Scottish tune books are filled with strathspeys and reels and not so many jigs. So people had to come up with more jigs. So he's writing his own quadrille tunes that are in 6/8. I am very sorry to say there's another quadrille tune that he wrote called Mrs. Macmillan's Quadrille, and it is utterly boring. Miss Macmillan's Quadrille, on the other hand, is really interesting. So I don't know if this is a reflection of the two personalities or if it just happens that he didn't manage to write as good a tune for Mrs. Macmillan as he did for Miss Macmillan. Let me play it for you.
Is this
Interesting.
a standard dance length? Is I guess 24 bar?
No, not specifically. Quadrilles went on for a while.
Okay, so it was not.
So
there was no figure
You
tied to
don't.
number.
It's not that you must have 3 parts, but you must have multiple parts, and you're going to be playing for longer than just 32 bars.
Right. Okay. So the dance is not fixed to a specific bar.
So there are many figures, and certain quadrille figures would last longer. And the form of these quadrilles, I'll just go into the dance one more time because it does make a difference. I don't know if you've ever been to a square dance here in the US where they announce, I'm going to do 2 squares, keep your partner, and stay in the same square in between the 2 dances. That is a relic of quadrilles, because you would take your partner and you would dance a bunch to certain music, and you'd stay in that square and have a little interlude, and then a new music would come on and you'd dance again. And in between each of those musical segments, you could chat with your partner and chat with the people in the square. And it was like the one time in Victorian era when you were basically unchaperoned to talk to your friends. Because you were only chaperoned by other people your age. So this was an important social aspect of that dance. And they would have up to, 3, 5 different musical segments in the same dance. So you have plenty of chances to chat in between them. So people don't necessarily know that now. And in modern dances, you're so used to changing partners each dance that element often gets overlooked. That was a big part of the social scene then. Okay, and so I don't know how long of a quadrille dance this was intended to be played for, and is the thing meant to be played multiple times through, or exactly how, but 3 parts. All right, let's play. Don't get too scared by the flats. Remember, about half of them are not flat after all. And a little faster. Okay, so Mrs. McMillan shoots a bland jig in C major. Miss McMillan, really interesting jig in C minor. I told you before that I really think that Charles Grant had a handle on writing tunes in minor keys. And that's why there are more minor keys than major keys in this particular group. One that I was definitely intending to include but left out is Charles Grant's Glen Grant. By the way, we have another Charles Grant tune in Fiddle Club, Miss Ann Gordon of Heath Cottage. We had it just a couple years ago, so I didn't put it back in. Although I haven't heard people playing it, so it probably means you don't remember. I could have probably gotten away with just throwing it in there. But let me play the Glen Grant Strathspey that may or may not be the Glen Grant Strathspey that J. Murdoch Henderson belonged on the list of best all-time Scottish Strathspeys. Here it is. Let me retune this. Okay, that'll be it. It's pretty grand. Yeah. So I think it's quite possible that's the one he meant rather than Skinner's. Although, tough competing with J. Scott Skinner. All right, let's play our tunes that we learned by ear. If you want to look at your sheet music, I'll allow you to do so. Remember that I announced there was a correction in the sheet music for the Fairy Hillock in bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bar 6 should be the same as bar 2, but there's a stray note in there. There's a D note that shouldn't be in there. All right. But you don't need to look at the music to play because we learned this by ear, right? Last, let's revisit Mrs. Jameson's favorite. There's errors in this one. I'm going to issue a correction. The most notable error is in bar 3, where the second and third notes are written F sharp and A. They should be a full space higher. It should be A and C sharp, the arpeggio notes, just like I taught it by ear. Okay, so Mrs. Jameson, don't read it because it's going to throw you off, right? Because of that error. By ear. right. So I think details about the Fiddle Club dance will be announced in upcoming. We do know that we are not going to have it really soon. We've often had it in March or April before the Capitol event weekend. The Capitol event weekend is kind of early this year. And so we didn't think we could fit it in easily with rehearsals and things like that. So it's going to be later in the season. But I think we did identify some potential dates to have it. And other than that, I don't have any other particular announcements. I already gave you the schedule of when upcoming Fiddle Club meetings are, which is normal second Sundays for March and April and first Sunday instead for May. And I hope you've enjoyed this look at this Scottish composer, Charles Grant. And I sure enjoyed getting to get better acquainted with more of his tunes. I've known a number of them for years, but this really gave me a chance to dive deeper. And
I do have one announcement, sort of more of a question to the group. We're trying to figure out new ways to reach people, and one of the ways that we're finding is that we're getting less engagement from people through email. I think certainly I've found this also elsewhere, although in my case I'm finding younger people don't want to do email, they want to do texts.
Right.
Would you be open? I mean, this would be something that we've talked with the board and approved, but we'd have the option of you opt in for SMS alerts. So not only will you get an email about the upcoming meeting, but you get a text about it as well. Is that something that people would be interested in? I just got to figure out a solution that'll allow me to send bulk texts. That doesn't charge me an arm and a leg because they think I'm a business. So would the people object if you got it? And would that help remind you of meetings if you got a text as well as an email? Because I know people get so much junk email. In the beginning, you get so many junk texts. So.
Right. I'm going to sign out on the live stream. So while we're discussing whether to publicize meetings by text, but if you have an opinion on that, chat.
Leave it in the chat.
Yeah, leave it in the chat.
Send me an email.
Or send an email to Pete.
Or text.
All right. Bye, everybody online. Thank you.